Jesus said, "There will be signs in the sun, moon, and the stars. On earth, distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. And when the fullness of the Gentiles is come in, the time of the Gentiles." So it talks about Jerusalem shall be repossessed by the Jewish nation, and the moon shall be turned to blood, and Jesus said there will be signs in the moon. This is one of those signs tonight, I think. One of those blood moons. There's been a lot of them of late. Of course the scientists will say, well, there's always been blood moons. Of course it has. Now you can time them. Just like this one tonight. This will all turn to blood now, tonight. But it doesn't cancel out the fact that these signs will still happen before Jesus' return. It could mean a lot of storms, because Jesus had to see the waves will roar, and apparently the desert whips up a lot of storms, and it makes dust go in front of the moon, which turns it to blood colour. Take a photograph. And when the fullness of the Gentiles is coming, that Bible verse, I find it quite interesting, because there was the Turks who had Jerusalem before the British, and before them there was the Ottoman Empire and all those types of things. The Romans, of course, repossessed it, and the Greeks conquered it. But the thing is, there's the Maccabean Wars and all that stuff between the Old and New Testament time. But the last king was Herod. After him there were 4 governors, Pontius Pilate, Herod and that. But Jesus, there was a prediction that a ruler would always be in Jerusalem until Shiloh came. And that was Genesis chapter 49, I think, verse 10. And of course Jesus was the Prince of Peace. Shalom, or Shiloh is the same word, spectre is. And I was saying about these fullness of time. When the fullness of time was come in, like this moon is timed. It's fantastic when you think about the idea of the moon and the sun and the earth lining up in eclipse. Because I think of it as like a picture of the Trinity, Father, Son and Holy Spirit. I take the moon to represent Jesus, because the Holy Spirit always reflected the glory of Jesus. I take the Son of Righteousness, who's to rise with healing in his wings, as being Jesus, of course. Because that prediction and prophecy of Malachi, remember, was that the Son of Righteousness would rise with healing in his wings. And of course Jesus came healing. And he healed the sick. And another Bible verse predicted in the Old Testament that he would heal the sick, and the blind would receive their sight. Interesting where the Septuagint quotes from the New Testament. the Greek translation of the original Hebrew. The apostles quoted from it, and so did Jesus. And what is interesting is that the phrase is left out, he shall open the eyes of the blind. In the Hebrew, of course, it was never left out, so it's still there in the Old Testament. Yeah, I can see the valleys in the moon as the eclipse is happening. Quite clever. It'll be bright red soon. Yeah. I'm just going to come back to that text in a minute. It's quite interesting because in Zechariah it says that when the fullness of the times come in and that in Jerusalem there would be mourning, and they shall look upon him whom they have pierced. And it says, and there shall be mourning as for an only son. And Revelation chapter 1 talks about, when Jesus returns in the clouds in power, great glory. And that it talks about him coming in. It talks about the Jewish people with great mourning as for an only son. And they shall look upon him whom they have pierced. And again, that verse keeps popping up throughout the New Testament. It's interesting. In the Gospels and that. The fullness of the times the Gentiles come in. And they shall look on him whom they have pierced. And shall mourn for him as for an only son. It just keeps being repeated even in Romans chapter 11. It talks about the fullness. When the fullness of the Gentiles are come in. And it says, so all Israel shall be saved. And Jesus said in Luke 21:25 that when the fullness of the Gentiles are come in, the Jews shall repossess Jerusalem. So perhaps the Bible is talking about, when shall you restore Jerusalem? Acts chapter 1. Not for you to know the times and the seasons. And it talks about the restitution of all things and that. Acts chapter 2. So, I'm thinking that there's a connection with all those verses.